50 years ago, if you had stopped a stranger on any street in America and asked them to say one verse from the Bible, you would have heard the same words almost every time. For God so loved the world. You saw it on bumper stickers. You saw it painted under the eyes of football players. You saw it on the bottom of grocery bags. It was the heartbeat of a whole culture. A short sentence about love and sacrifice that even people who never opened a Bible could recite. Stop a stranger today and ask the same question, and you will get a completely different answer. The memory verse of our age is only 2 words long. Judge not. You do not have to be a pastor to know it. You do not have to believe a single thing about God to quote it. It has become the last word in almost every argument. The sentence people reach for the moment anyone suggests that a choice, a behavior, or a way of living might actually be wrong. Draw a line and someone will throw it back at you. Didn't your own Jesus say not to judge? Here is what almost nobody tells you. The way we use those 2 words today would have been unrecognizable to the man who first said them. We have taken a razor-sharp warning and turned it into a soft pillow. We have taken a courtroom sentence and printed it on a throw blanket. And there is a worn stone platform in a city that does not yet have a single church in it, where one day the most dangerous trial of Paul's life will unfold. That platform holds the secret to what this verse actually costs. We will get there, but not yet, because to understand what Jesus meant, you first have to see where he was standing when he said it. Picture a hillside above the Sea of Galilee. The grass is still wet, the morning is cool, and the crowd keeps growing because word has traveled that the carpenter from Nazareth is teaching again. He climbs, he sits down, which is what a rabbi does when he is about to say something with full authority. And over the next few minutes, he does not lower the moral bar for these people. He raises it so high it takes the breath out of the room. You have heard it said, "Do not murder," he tells them. But I tell you, the anger simmering in your chest already puts you in danger. You have heard it said, "Do not commit adultery." But I tell you, the look you thought no one noticed already counts. Love your enemies. Pray for the people trying to destroy you. Be perfect the way your Father in heaven is perfect. Stay with me, because this is the part that breaks the modern reading in half. For 2 full chapters, Jesus has been demanding a level of purity no human being has ever reached. And then we are asked to believe that in the very next breath he throws up his hands and says, "But hey, whatever anyone else does, never once suggest they might be wrong." That makes no sense. None. Jesus is not switching off the human ability to tell right from wrong. He is aiming at something older and darker and much closer to home. He is going after the spirit that stands on other people's failures to make itself look tall. The spirit of the religious expert who studies your sin, so he never has to look at his own. And to see it clearly, you have to look at the actual word he used. The New Testament was written in a form of Greek so precise, it can slice a single idea into 3 different words. And the word we translate as judge is the word krino. In English, judge is a loose, floppy word. You judge a pie contest. You judge how far your bumper is from the wall. You judge whether the avocado is ripe. When we hear it, we usually think of nothing more than forming an opinion. Krino is not that. Krino is a word with a gavel in its hand. It does not mean to notice. It does not mean to weigh. It means to condemn, to hand down a final sentence, to declare a person guilty with no appeal, to cut them off from mercy and walk away. Here is what most people miss. The Greek language had other words ready for the healthy kind of evaluation. Diakrino, to tell one thing from another. Anakrino, to examine something carefully, the way a doctor examines a wound. If Jesus wanted to forbid discernment, those words were sitting right there. He did not reach for them. He reached for krino. Condemn not, or you will be condemned. He is talking to the citizens of his kingdom, and he is naming a specific poison. In his day, the religious elite had turned condemnation into a craft. They took the law of God, which was meant to heal, and sharpened it into a blade. They stood on little platforms of their own making, drew a hard line with themselves on the clean side and everyone else on the dirty side, and passed sentence on souls they had no intention of saving. They did not want to restore the broken. They wanted to stand on them. And Jesus looks his rough, unpolished followers in the eye and says, "That is not how my kingdom works." Then he attaches a promise so heavy it should stop your heart. "In the same way you judge," he says, you will be judged. The measure you use will be measured back to you. Think about what that means. If you insist on carrying a clipboard through life, tracking everyone's failures, offering no grace and playing the final judge of your neighbor's soul, God will honor the standard you chose. He will take the exact, merciless ruler you held over everyone else and lay it against your own life on the last day. You want to live by the gavel. You will be judged by the gavel. You want to pour out condemnation with no mercy mixed in. He will measure you with your own cup. None of us survives that. Not once. When you condemn another person, you are quietly signing the terms of your own destruction. Because no human being can pass the flawless test we so easily demand of the people we despise. Now, Jesus is the best teacher who ever lived, so he does not leave this hanging in the air as a theory. He drops it straight into a picture, so ridiculous the crowd probably laughed out loud. We are so used to reading the Bible in a hushed, serious voice that we miss the moments when Jesus is being funny on purpose. Here is one. Why do you stare at the speck in your brother's eye, he asks, and pay no attention to the plank in your own? The word for speck is karphos, a tiny dry splinter, a fleck of sawdust, small, annoying, real but small. The word for plank is dokos, and a dokos is not a bigger splinter. A dokos is a load-bearing roof beam, a length of heavy timber that holds up a house. So picture the scene Jesus is painting. A man is walking through the village with a 10-foot beam sticking straight out of his eye socket. He is knocking over fruit stands. He is clocking people in the head every time he turns around. He is completely, cheerfully unaware that he cannot see a thing. And this man, with a wooden beam jutting from his face, leans in close to his neighbor and whispers, "Hold still. Let me just get that little speck out of your eye." It is absurd. It is meant to be. And it is deadly serious, because Jesus names the man with one word: hypocrite. Here is the part nobody tells you. In the ancient world, hypocrites was not a religious insult. It was a theater term. It meant a stage actor, a man who held a large painted mask in front of his face and spoke his lines from behind it, pretending to be someone he was not. When Jesus calls the condemning man a hypocrite, he is reaching up and pulling off the mask. He is saying, you are performing. You are playing the role of the spotless surgeon sent to fix everyone's vision, and the whole time a blinding beam is buried in your own eye. A hypocrite is not someone who struggles with sin. Everyone struggles with sin. A hypocrite is someone who fakes being above it. It is the man who lectures his neighbor about his tone of voice, while nursing real hatred in his own heart. It is the woman who tears apart another family's parenting, while quietly poisoning her own home with gossip. But this is exactly where our culture misreads the whole thing. When people quote "judge not," they act as if the punchline is, "so leave the speck alone." Mind your own business. It is none of your concern. Read the actual next line. That is not even close to what Jesus says. First, take the plank out of your own eye, he says, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. He does not say the speck is imaginary. He does not say it does not matter. A splinter in the eye is agony. It can cause infection. It can cause blindness. The brother genuinely needs help getting it out. The sin in your brother's life is real, and it is hurting him, and he needs people who love him enough to help him deal with it. The goal was never to abandon your brother. The goal is loving, careful rescue. Jesus is saying you are disqualified from the delicate work of helping someone see, as long as you are stumbling around blind yourself. You cannot pull someone into the light while you are still standing in the dark. So he demands something brutal. He demands you go after your own sin first, ruthlessly, before you ever touch your brother's. Drag your own beam out into the daylight. Repent of it, grieve over it, and only then, stripped of your pride, painfully aware of how much grace you needed yourself, are you allowed to walk over to your brother. And when you do, you will not come with a gavel. You will come with shaking hands, like one patient helping another. If that idea just rearranged something in your chest, do me one favor. Take a second and subscribe, because this is the kind of Bible teaching the algorithm buries unless people like you tell it not to. And tell me in the comments right now, before we go further, have you ever had a plank you could not see until someone gently pointed it out? I read those. That is the whole reason I make these. Because the moment you accept this calling, to see clearly and heal gently, You slam straight into one of the most jarring turns in the entire sermon. Jesus has just torn the gavel out of your hand. He has just dismantled the whole condemning spirit. And then, without pausing for breath, he says something that requires the sharpest, coldest judgment imaginable. Do not give what is holy to dogs, he says. Do not throw your pearls in front of pigs. They will only trample them into the mud, and then turn and tear you apart. If judge not meant switching off all discernment, this sentence would be a flat contradiction sitting 2 verses later. But Jesus does not contradict himself. He is handing you a paradox you have to live inside. To feel the shock of it, you have to know these animals. In the 1st century, dogs were not pets curled up by the fire. The Jewish historian Josephus and others describe them the way everyone knew them. Wild, diseased packs roaming the streets, feeding on garbage and worse. And pigs, to a Jewish crowd, were the picture of everything unclean. To touch one made you filthy. Jesus uses these 2 images on purpose, and he uses them to describe certain people. There are hearts, he says, so hardened against the truth, so eager to attack it, that handing them the sacred things of God is not just wasteful. It is dangerous. They will not treasure the pearl. They will grind it into the dirt and then come for your throat. Now here is the unavoidable question. How could you ever obey that command without making a judgment? You could not. To keep from throwing your pearls to pigs, you have to be able to recognize a pig. You have to look at the person in front of you, weigh their pattern, their hostility, their contempt, and make a firm, boundary-drawing decision. You have to be able to say, this conversation is over. I will not keep handing something sacred to someone who only wants to mock it and hurt me. That is a judgment, and Jesus commands it. He hammers it home a few lines later. Watch out for false prophets, he says. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but on the inside they are hungry wolves. You will know them by their fruit. Notice how sharp that is. A wolf in sheep's clothing, by definition, does not look like a wolf. It looks exactly like a sheep. It sounds like a sheep. It moves through the middle of the flock, and no one blinks. If you live by the modern slogan, accepting everyone at face value and never questioning anyone's motives or teaching, you will be eaten alive, and the whole flock with you. So Jesus commands his people to become fruit inspectors. Look past the wool. Look at the harvest. What kind of character is this person actually growing? What is the real result of their influence over time? You cannot spot a false prophet without making a firm moral and theological judgment. Jesus wants his followers to have minds sharp enough to see the wolf, while the rest of the world is busy petting its coat. And this is not a small footnote. It shatters the whole fantasy of an early church that never judged anything. Read the rest of the New Testament, and you will find the apostles making rigorous judgments on nearly every page. Consider Paul. Paul plants a church in Corinth, a wealthy, chaotic port city, and then he moves on. Almost immediately, the whole thing starts to fracture. Word reaches him that one of the men in the congregation is sleeping with his own stepmother. A thing so far past the line that even the pagans in that city found it disgusting. And here is the shocking part. The Corinthian church is not grieving over it. They are proud. They are congratulating themselves on how open-minded and tolerant they have become. They have invented an early, twisted version of judge not, and they are wearing it like a medal. Paul's answer detonates. He does not tell them to mind their own business. He does not tell them to honor the man's truth. He writes, I have already passed judgment on the man who did this. He orders the church to remove him from the fellowship. In plain words, he asks them, is it not those inside the church you are to judge? God will handle those outside. Drive out the wickedness from among you. So how do we hold that next to Jesus saying, judge not? The answer is motive and jurisdiction. When Paul tells the church to act, it is not arrogance looking down to destroy. It is love reaching out to rescue. The whole point of removing the man was not to end him. It was to shock him awake, to let him feel the deadly direction of his life, so that he might turn and be saved. And in Paul's second letter, we get the ending. The man repented. The man was restored. The severe love actually worked. Feel the difference in your bones. Condemnation looks down from a pedestal to crush. Correction looks across from shared brokenness to heal. One says, you are beneath me. The other says, walk with me, because I have been down there too. This is exactly where the modern idea of love falls apart. We have been trained by the world to believe that love means total agreement. That if you really loved someone, you would applaud every choice, celebrate every path, and never once whisper that a road might end in a cliff. To warn them would be judging, and judging, we are told, is the opposite of love. But real love has nothing to do with that cheap, nervous approval. Imagine you watch someone you cared about walking toward the edge of a cliff, blindfolded. The single most hateful thing you could possibly do is smile, honor their journey, and refuse to comment on their sense of direction. Real love has enough clear sight to see the drop, and enough courage to scream stop, even when stop is the last word they want to hear. Jesus was the most loving human being who ever lived, and he warned people about judgment and ruin more than anyone else in the Bible. He did not applaud the rich young ruler's greed. He did not flatter the pride of the Pharisees. He did not pretend the woman at the well had not left a trail of broken marriages behind her. He saw it all clearly. He named it honestly, and then he offered every one of them a way out. You cannot heal a disease you refuse to diagnose. But here is where we finally reach the deepest layer of all, the part that explains the whole warning. We are told to inspect the fruit, to name the wolf, to guard what is sacred, and we are absolutely forbidden from doing the one thing that belongs to God alone, passing final sentence on a human soul, because the judgment seat is not empty. It is occupied, and you were never qualified to sit in it. In one of his letters, Paul writes to a church tearing itself apart over small things, over food and holy days, everyone despising everyone else, handing down verdicts on each other's standing before God. And Paul stops them cold. Why do you judge your brother, he asks. Why do you look down on him? We will all stand before the judgment seat of God. That phrase, judgment seat, is one Greek word, bema. Now go back to that worn stone platform I promised you, the one in a city with no church yet, because it was real, and you can still stand where it stood. In the heart of ancient Corinth, in the open marketplace, there was a raised stone platform called the bema. Archaeologists dug it out of the Corinthian agora, and it is still there. It was the place where the Roman governor sat to hear cases, hand down rulings, and pronounce sentence. It was the seat of absolute power in the city, and years after Jesus taught on that hillside, Paul was dragged in front of that exact platform. A Roman official named Gallio sat on the Corinthian bema, while a mob demanded Paul be condemned. It was the most dangerous trial of his life, and Gallio refused to play judge over a man's soul and threw the case out. That is the platform, and Paul takes that image, that seat of ultimate ruling, and says to you and me, get off it. That is not your seat, because when you look at another human being and decide they are worthless, beyond saving, nothing more than their worst mistake, you are attempting a kind of cosmic coup. You are trying to climb onto the bema of the universe and shove the rightful judge off his own platform. It is the sin of Eden all over again, the itch to be like God, deciding good and evil on your own terms. And you are unqualified for the job for one simple reason. You are blind. You do not have the evidence. When you look at someone who failed, someone who hurt you deeply, what do you actually see? You see the action. You see the damage. You see the visible wreckage on the surface. Now think about what God sees. He sees the action too, yes, but he also sees the childhood that shaped them before they could defend themselves. He sees the fear underneath the anger. He sees the chemistry in the brain, the private wars, the nights they tried to resist and failed by an inch. He sees every tear they ever cried where no one was watching. His evidence is complete. Yours is a single torn corner of a photograph. When you condemn, you are handing down a final ruling on 1% of the file. You are holding one puzzle piece and swearing you can see the whole picture. It is not just arrogant. It is absurd. This is why James, the brother of Jesus, echoes the mountain so fiercely in his own letter. There is only one lawgiver and judge, he writes, the one able to save and to destroy. So who are you to judge your neighbor? Who are you? You are a patient in the same hospital. You might be further along in recovery. You might have fewer open wounds today, but you are breathing the exact same grace that is keeping the person in the next bed alive. So think back to the men Jesus first said all this to. They were sitting on wet grass on a Galilean hillside, rough and unfinished. Over the next 3 years, these same men would argue about which of them was the greatest. They would ask permission to call down fire on a village that snubbed them. They would fall asleep on the worst night of his life. Peter would deny he ever knew him 3 times to a servant girl by a fire. Judas would sell him for the price of a slave. Jesus knew all of it as he taught them. He knew every failure coming, and he was not building a club of perfect people. He was building a family of broken ones who would live differently from the empire of Rome and the religious machine of Jerusalem. A new people whose currency was not superiority, but mercy. Once you finally see what he was saying, it changes how you walk into a room. It changes how you look at the family member who failed you, or the stranger whose whole life runs against everything you believe is right. You lose the luxury of standing back and throwing stones, and you lose the luxury of staying silent and pretending the cliff is not there. You are called into the hard, beautiful middle. This is not a call to become soft. This is not a call to go silent. This is not a call to pretend nothing is ever wrong. This is a call to see clearly, speak truthfully, and love without a shred of pride. So every morning, walk up to the mirror first. Find the heavy beam of your own pride, your own lust, your own anger, your own greed, and drag it out into the light of God's grace. Let His holiness expose the wound, and trust that the same fire that opens it is the fire that heals it. And then, only then, with your eyes finally washed clear, turn and look at your brother. You will still see his sin. You will still weigh the fruit. But you will not pick up a gavel. You will pick up a towel. You will go to him not as a judge, but as a brother, and tell him the truth because you love him too much to watch him walk into the dark. You will warn him about the wolves. You will guard the sacred things. And you will do all of it knowing the only reason you are standing at all. Because the one person who actually had the right to condemn you, the rightful judge of the universe, stepped down off his bema, walked to a cross, and took your sentence in his own body. If this changed the way you hear those 2 words, then here are the 3 things I need you to carry out of this. First, the truth about the verse itself. Judge not was never a ban on discernment. The word is krino, to condemn, to pass final sentence. Jesus commands you to see clearly, to inspect fruit, to spot wolves, and to guard what is holy. What he forbids is the arrogant, merciless spirit that stands on other people to feel tall. Second, what it asks of you. You are called to the hard middle, not the coward's silence that lets a friend walk off a cliff, and not the tyrant's gavel that crushes a soul from a pedestal. You are called to pull the beam from your own eye first, and then help your brother with hands that are gentle because they have been broken open too. And third, the thing I hope keeps you up tonight in the best way. The ground at the foot of the cross is perfectly level. There are no pedestals there. There are no judgment seats left for us to climb onto. There is only a king who stepped down from the only seat that ever mattered, so that people like us, who could never survive our own standard, could be measured with mercy instead. Pour that mercy out, because with the exact cup you use, it will be measured back to you. So tell me down in the comments, who is the one person you need to trade the gavel for a towel with this week? Say a name, even just to yourself. And if this helped you see an old verse with new eyes, subscribe and share it with one person who needs it, because that is genuinely how this reaches the people it was made for.